What's your I'm old now indicator? Story 1. Reading headlines about music and film stars and realizing that I've no idea who these people are, nor what exactly they're famous for. Story 2. The fact that I expect people to apply for office jobs to be able to use a mouse and a keyboard. The number of folks who are overwhelmed by these two devices is on the rise due to actually young folks often only really know touch screens. Story 3. It's May 13th, 2024, and for this question, here is my response from a 39M who is single with no kids. My nieces and nephews that I helped change their diapers, fill their bottle, then pat them to sleep, and to whom I held both their hands while they were leaning to walk, are driving or graduating high school this year. They're 16 driving or 18, graduating and going to college this fall. Obviously, I'm so happy that they're healthy and have avoided any mishaps, but it seems like yesterday that they were babies and little naughty toddlers. Story 4. A while back, a guy came screaming into a parking lot with stereo blasting a good tune. My first thought was, wow, he is going to wreck his hearing. I knew it was over at that point. Story 5. Lots of them. The most recent notable on is this. I work as a software developer on a team called Matrix. We were in a group chat with just the team, looking at code. I quoted, "I don't even see the code anymore. All I see are blondes, brunettes, redheads, blank stares, except for the one guy on my team in my age bracket, who chuckled. Matrix references are apparently old guy jokes now. That's fine. I'll make a note of that. Filed under Get Off My Lawn." Story 6. When I go shopping during school hours and see kids shopping as well when they should be in high school, I now can relate to my eyebrow lady when she would ask if I was ditching school when I was in my 20s. Young adults look like kiddos to me. Story 7. For me, aged 53, it's when I think back to things that happened X years ago, then realize X years from now, I'll be dead. For instance, last week was 32 years since a memorable, for me, sports event. I can remember clearly lots of details about what happened that day. Obviously, leaving aside illness, accidents, none of us know for sure what's going to happen in the future, etc., etc., if I was thinking about something that happened 12 years ago. In 12 years, I'll be 65 and would hope to still be alive. But 32 years from now, when I'd be 85, I'd say with a fair degree of certainty I won't make it to 85. Story 8. I'm 42 and recently had to train a new girl at work. We got on very well. She's very similar to me in a lot of ways, and a few people asked if she was my daughter. When she told me her age, I found out she was born on the same day as my daughter, who passed away when she was 2 way back in 2006. It made me feel old and sad. I still see her little face as if it were last week, but knowing she'd be driving, working, making plans for her life now really hits home how long it's been. Story 9. Slower healing from injuries. I've always been pretty active. I'm active military, so I'm forced to maintain it, but got into mountaineering/running/CrossFit and that type of stuff in my 20s. Now that I'm 36, I've noticed that proper sleep and recovery are way more important. I've always just been the type to work through the pain. Story 10. When you get that injury that will never be normal again, that impedes your ability to do some of the things you loved. I had swelling during both pregnancies that led to carpal tunnel, and it knocked out the sensation in the tips of my thumbs/indexes/middles. I love making jewelry, but holding small tools requires applying pressure. Pressure causes numbness. Numb escalates to dull roar pain with repetition. Pushing buggies, strollers, feels like holding on to a faint electrical current if done for longer than 10 minutes, or if the walk is bumpy. I want lightning superpowers or something if I'm going to be dealing with this BS LOL. I got ripped. Story 11. At the hairdresser's a couple of years ago. The American crime series about Monica Lewinsky was on TV around that time. I asked the hairdresser if he watched it. He said his mom watches it. I then quickly came to understand that he didn't know who Monica Lewinsky was, what happened, and why it was such a scandal. He was born a few years after the event. It would be like some middle-aged lady telling me about Watergate back in the day. I haven't recovered. Story 12. Getting excited about home appliances and nifty knickknacks to make life a little easier, and seeing people around me of the same age advancing and making big steps in life. Some friends of mine had a baby, and even though I don't want any myself, I wouldn't let myself even consider having a baby at this age. Also, to be fair, I'm not that old, but this is how I know I'm an adult. Even if I'm 25, I don't really realize it until something like this happens. Story 13. I tutor kids in various foreign languages, and one time I planned an amazing lesson for one of my students. It was essentially Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but in their target language, and all the questions were facts about the culture of that country. When I proudly showed the title of the game, the kid was super confused. I thought it was a language issue, but she had never, at age 10, heard of the show. So I had to be like, oh, it's a game where you have to pick the right answer? I was really astonished, as it never crossed my mind that a 10-year-old would not even know the premise of the game. Story 14. My grandmother was in the hospital a few months back. This girl, who looks like she's about 13 wearing a nurse's uniform, comes in the room. I look at her name tag. Underneath her name are the initials RNBSN. This 13-year-old girl is a grown-ass woman with a college degree in a fairly challenging field and a highly competent professional who knows her stuff. She looks like a kid to me. That's when I realized I am getting old. When skilled professionals with college degrees start looking so young, you wonder if they are old enough to drive. Story 15. I look good for my age, and people usually think I'm 5. 10 years younger, I'm 42. And I know I don't look under 21, but I tossed my ID on the counter buying liquor this weekend, and the lady at the register just laughed. I was like, oh, all right then, Elmau. Story 16. I am looking at my kids and remembering when I were feeling, saying, and experiencing the same things they are now, trying my best to share knowledge and experiences without denying them their turn to make mistakes and learn from them, knowing that one day I will just be a memory and maybe a photo on the wall. One day, they will be watching their kids with the same thoughts and emotions that I'm experiencing while watching them, trying to make sure the good memories are far more than the bad. Kids will make you feel old. Story 17. I went to Waterloo, Ontario, and I was surprised at how many apartment buildings there are now. I went to McGregor Middle School, and there used to be 1 to 2 floor houses all over that area when I was in middle school, and I legitimately did a fucking double take when I noticed the apartment buildings are all up against the school now. It was remarkably surreal. Story 18. On Mother's Day, a customer at the grocery store I worked at tentatively asked if my mother was still around. I am old enough looking that there should not be an assumption my parents are dead. I said she is, but she doesn't return my calls. Story 19. I usually don't classify myself as old. I am definitely the baby in my friend group. But when I volunteered at a summer camp for kids, age 7, 9, and they called me old for saying I didn't get my first phone until I was 11 and could only call and text and play like Snake on it, because I started to walk home from school alone and gagged to cross a road with a higher speed limit, 70 kilometers per h. And then them laughing at me when suggesting they could play a game such as hide and seek or taken, dat, because apparently they are not babies. Like, sorry, but yes, you are babies. Or at least should be. And like I said, I am not that old. But in that moment, I really did feel old. And almost every time I met one of those kids afterwards, they joked about how old I am. Story 20. Being used to random body pain doesn't faze me anymore. Being annoyed at noise in my neighborhood, not knowing WTF slang kids use. Seeing young fucks at the pub in their 20s and realizing I'm the old fuck now, even though I'm only a decade older. Realizing that I was just a toddler when my dad was my age is wild, and that he's not double my age anymore. Story 21. I explained to a young coworker I watched shows on a 13 black and white tube TV with only 13 channels when I was a kid. And I remembered getting a color zenith on a Lazy Susan, and watching technology change and grow up has me still baffled at my own age. Story 22. Last week's beef between Drake and KL, I just got lost in the words and couldn't understand the lingo people were saying. It felt like I was reading a different language. He's lit was the last vibe word I remember from like 10 years ago. I understand nothing kids are saying today. Story 23. According to my wife, it's the fact that I prefer to make big purchases on my laptop and refuse to do so on my phone. Also, when I started my software engineering career, everyone was older than me. Now I'm one of the older people I work with, and the only one with kids, and the only one who's actually owns a house. Story 24. I personally don't feel old, but my first getting older moment was when a younger coworker was genuinely surprised I was alive for 9/11. Went to a football game last year at my wife's alma mater, and some college kids asked me why I still wear skater shoes. Story 25. Physically, my knees sounding like snapping twigs anytime I bend over. Everything else? I get excited about a new scrub daddy, invested in a good vacuum, annoyed by people being too loud or stupid, wanting to sleep by 8 p.m., enjoying quiet alone time. Story 26. I complain about groceries prices. I say, they don't make music like this anymore. My back hurts. I get excited when I get my period because, oh God, please no menopause. I'm slowing down and enjoying life more. This aging sucks, and I get sad knowing I'm not making it out alive. Makes me hold my kids a little tighter. I'm mid-40s. Story 27. Just last week, my dog saw a rabbit and went running off down the street. I tried to stop him, but he's a bulldozer. I tore my bicep tendon and didn't slow him in the slightest. Apparently, it's a thing that happens most often to men between 40 and 60 years old. I'm probably going to have to get surgery for it, and I'm really not looking forward to it. Story 28. Went to vote in the last election, and the young lady at the table asked me if I needed someone to show me how to use the electronic voting machine. Then I remembered the first computer I saw in an office, and it was 1973. Double whammy. Story 29. I knew I was an adult when the Playboy Playmate was younger than me, sometime in 1979, IRC. I knew I was old when I held my first grandchild. When your kids start having kids, you're old. I knew I was a senior the first time I accidentally sat on my balls. Nobody warned me how dangerous the droop could get as you aged. I'm warning you all now. Be careful. You're welcome. Story 30. I commented already, but another old guy moment. I was in an elevator at a hotel and some teenage kid was in there and he asked me if I was in town to see Cardi B, and I said, "Excuse me?" because I genuinely didn't understand the question. Now, knowing who Cardi B is, my question is, do I look like a guy who'd fly to a different state to see Cardi B? Story 31. Trees. When I realized that the saplings I saw planted in my street have slowly grown to towering American plane trees. You think of them as unchanging, or changing only over the length of a human lifetime. Then you see how much they've grown and realize, yes, right, a human lifetime. Also, I suffered a head injury in a cycling mishap the other day and went to hospital. Was treated by a lovely young Irish doctor, as I described him to my family. He was discussing his coming birthday and the nurse was teasing, 44, 45. I'm 48, don't know what to make of that. I usually adjudge my contemporaries to be old fellas. Hope you have a good one, doctor. First name began with K. Story 32. When kids these days honestly have never heard of a popular artist from what feels like recent history. Who is Rob Zombie? What do you mean by you feel like Kurt Cobaining yourself? When I unironically say kids these days. When I'm unsure if I've correctly used modern vernacular. Discovering new terminology, only to find out it is no longer in usage. Being tired all the time. When I was your age, and the person actually learns something new even if they don't care a bit. It used to cost, I'll add this to the list, but also as an apology. Please excuse typos. My vision is incredibly blurry, but I swear that's a side effect I get when I'm quitting certain toxic chemical uses. Not because I'm objectively old and my vision is failing. Every time I wish I could go back and kick my own ass for being a little punk and acting foolishly. I'll stop right here. Because while all this is accurate, it is also true that I don't even recognize myself anymore, and it's provoking sorrow that I gain nothing from experiencing. I'm 36. I should not feel like I'm getting ready for my retirement party. Story 33. I took my copy of Cranium to my in-laws to play with my wife's nieces. It said teens to adults, they are both in high school. They had no idea on most of the questions. I looked at the manufacturer date, it was 2004, the year after one was born and the year the other was born. Story 34 first. It shocked me when the background music at grocery stores was my music of my generation. That was always old fart grandma and grandpa music. Then, it shocked me when the background music became the young brat music, rap crap and the like. And then it shocked me again when the background music became stuff I cannot even categorize. It is completely alien. Story 35. Hearing a 23-year-old say that they don't understand young kids nowadays, and realizing that when I was 23, this person was one of the young kids I didn't understand. So there are people too young for me to understand who are old enough to have young people for them to not understand. Story 36. I just pay attention to the people who are influential in the music, art, and movies I actually enjoy and engage with. And that's it. Always been that way. There are too many influencers and random people that are famous for absolutely no reason, as far as I can tell, to try to even keep up. And celebrity is basically pointless, at least to me. Never made me want to buy things, for instance. I appreciate people who are good at the art or craft I enjoy specifically, and that's it. It's easier to stay focused and enjoy new music coming out that way, MO. Story 37. For the first time, I had to tell another adult about a time period they were too young to remember. For those wondering, explained about what it was like being a young kid in the early 2000s and only being able to watch your favorite TV show at the time that it aired, not on streaming services whenever you wanted to. Story 38. In my 20s, pulling a hamstring while playing recreational sports. Stretching, what's that? In my 30s, kids I grew up with having kids. Parents are older and wiser, and I remember this idiot puking in a urinal. Also in my 30s, getting hit on regularly by 18, 25-year-old women. So that's where they were when I was their age. In my 40s, realizing that my Atari and Nintendo-reared brain isn't wired for games that utilize a gazillion button and joystick directional pad combinations. Oh, great. I just laid down in the middle of a firefight again. Now, injuring myself while sleeping. Nothing says I'm ancient like straining an Achilles, your lower back, or a neck muscle in the act of doing nothing. Story 39. Well, I was just at the drive-thru with this post open, and the cashier asked about my laptop. Told him it was like 4 or 5 years old, got it when my car was broken into while I was in college. Except it still feels like that was a year ago, and I've now been out of college now for almost 4 years. Story 40. Mine is that I see the same stupid shit coming back around for a third or fourth time. From fashion to political things to what passes for conventional wisdom, and people making the same sorts of excuses and reasoning for why it's valid/good/correct. And knowing that in another generation's time all of that will flip yet again, and you still won't be able to reason with people about it. The youngsters are convinced they are onto something when really they are just doing exactly what young people have always done, and to the same degree of frequently misguided idealism. The middle-aged people are pissed at the youngsters as they always have been. And not for good reason, usually just selfish or misguided reasons, and the old people are too stuck in whatever time period they came up in to change or see where they themselves are full of shit. Everyone talks past everyone else, and most of them are wrong to one degree or another, including me. Story 41. Having to time my caloric intake in the evening so it's not too close to bedtime. Feeling pinches in my lower back and glutes. Going to a vintage market and seeing a bunch of Y2K fashion I wore in my 20s. Hell, 10 years ago I felt old when I made a Punky Brewster reference at a happy hour, and none of my colleagues knew what I was talking about. Story 42. I saw an advert last year for a vacuum which also doubled up as carpet cleaner, washes on the way forward and sucks it up and dries on pulling it backwards. The thing cost about £500, but I was like, wow, I'd love one of those. I was 36 when I first thought a carpet cleaner was something I wanted in my life. Been depressed ever since, haha. Story 43. I work in recruitment. A few months ago, a very promising person applied for a mid-level position. He had a BA and a few years of relevant work experience. When I saw that he was born in the year I graduated high school, I felt old. I also feel old when I realize that all the managers, the CEOs, the CFOs, and the CTOs, they are not boomers. They are just a few years older than me, closer to me in age than I am to the juniors. Story 43. Something really annoy me. I feel like a grumpy old man. Even my father have welcomed me to Grumpy Old Schooler Club. I'm not even 40. I really don't care what people think. I do what is most important to me almost in every situation. Don't have the slightest interest in learning a new video game. I even cannot be arsed in playing same game I played all my childhood and adult life. Until I had children of my own. I value 2 other lives more than my own, my sons. I only have 2 kids.